Why we romanticize sadness in photography. There is a strange comfort in sadness when it is captured through a lens. A photograph of a person staring out of a rain-soaked window, a blurred streetlight reflecting on wet asphalt, a face half hidden in shadow. These images don't just show sadness, they refine it, shape it, and somehow make it beautiful. But why do we keep doing this? Why does sadness so often become aesthetic? The answer begins with a contradiction at the heart of photography itself. Photography is supposed to document reality. It is proof, evidence, a frozen second of what was. Yet the moment a camera enters the scene, reality begins to shift. The subject becomes aware, the framing begins, the light is chosen, the emotion is curated. Sadness, in particular, becomes something else entirely, it becomes composed. We don't just capture sadness. We stage it, even unintentionally. A model asked to look natural rarely looks natural. A candid shot is often only candid because we agreed to call it that. And even in street photography, where spontaneity is the goal, the photographer's eye is already searching for meaning, pattern, and emotion. Sadness, when framed, becomes legible. It becomes readable like poetry. And that is where romanticization begins. Because in real life, sadness is rarely aesthetic. It is messy, boring, repetitive. Sometimes it is just lying in bed too long, not answering messages, eating without tasting food. There is no perfect lighting in those moments. No cinematic composition, no soft grain or dramatic contrast. But photography filters all of that out. It selects. It elevates certain fragments of sadness and removes the rest. What remains is not the full experience of grief or loneliness, it is its most visually expressive version. A tear becomes a symbol. A shadow becomes metaphor. A blurred figure becomes longing. And slowly, sadness stops being just an emotion. It becomes a language. Social media amplifies this transformation. We scroll through feeds filled with carefully composed melancholy, monochrome portraits, rainy reflections, empty rooms with open windows. These images do not just show sadness, they teach us how sadness should look. And once we learn that visual grammar, we start to perform it ourselves. We begin to associate emotional depth with aesthetic sadness. If it looks cinematic, it feels more real. If it is soft-focused or desaturated, it feels more meaningful. But here is the deeper irony. The more beautiful sadness becomes, the more distance we create from its rawness. Because aesthetic sadness is safe. A well-composed photograph of loneliness does not require us to feel actual loneliness. We can admire it, share it, even identify with it, without having to fully enter it. This is why romanticized sadness is so powerful. It allows us to experience emotion at a controlled distance. Like standing outside a storm while admiring the lightning. There is also something deeply human in this impulse. We are meaning-making creatures. When we see suffering or solitude, we instinctively search for structure. Photography gives us that structure. It turns chaos into composition. It gives pain a frame, and in doing so, makes it easier to look at. Even artists themselves are not immune to this. Many photographers admit that they are drawn to melancholic scenes because sadness carries visual honesty, because it strips away performance and leaves something raw. But the camera always reshapes what it touches. And so we arrive at a paradox. We romanticize sadness in photography because it helps us understand it. But in romanticizing it, we also soften it, stylize it, and sometimes misunderstand it. We begin to believe that sadness must be beautiful to be meaningful. Yet real sadness does not ask for beauty. It does not need composition. It does not follow light or framing or rule of thirds. It simply exists. Photography cannot capture all of that truth, but it can gesture toward it. And perhaps that is why we keep returning to these images. Not because they fully represent sadness, but because they hint at something we struggle to say directly. A photograph of sadness is never just about sadness. It is about the desire to see our inner lives reflected back at us in a form we can understand. And maybe, in the end, we romanticize sadness in photography not because we love sadness, but because we are still trying to make peace with it.